Welcome back, everyone. A whole lot sure has happened since we last checked in. For one, Archie was turned into Quigley, a tiny dog, by God. And now there's a whole mess of trouble at his company.
Seems awfully convoluted if you ask me.
It sure does, and a little bit far-fetched, but also a little bit scary. And to unpack why it's scary and how we can surmount that, let's go into some questions, shall we? As we can see, almost everyone at Archie's company really hates dogs, to quite an unreasonable degree.
I agree.
Do you think this movie is set on Earth, or in some sort of hell universe where everyone hates dogs? Do you think that someday it could be possible for mankind to travel there? And if so, do you think that mankind is ethically obligated to destroy this universe? In this scene, we saw a very serious conversation about sharing and charity. Do you believe that charity is a sign of strength or of weakness? What do you think about God's explicit pro-charity stance in Quigley? Do you think that Quigley is God's way of personally damning Randian objectivism? Now in this scene, Quigley's new family talks a little bit about how sad it was to lose their old dog. Do you think Quigley will ever figure out why this family mourned their old dog so much that not only have they never replaced him, but they can barely bear to talk about him without openly weeping? Do you think it's unethical to inform your new dog about your old dead dog?
Now, Chef, we just saw what it would be like if you entered the workplace for the first time, but your boss were not a boss, but an angry, vengeful god. I know. Now, luckily, my first job was nothing like that, but I was curious. What was your first job like?
Well, my first job was working at the tuna cannery. My job was to take the still living tuna and chop off the heads. And then I would rip the spines out, pull the still beating hearts from the flesh and chuck it with their other entrails into a chama bucket, which we would use to feed the other fish and get them into our cannery. And every time I would chop a fish, I would feel a little more of my humanity slipping away into the black Alaskan waters as the screams echoed throughout the factory. Oh, and don't get me started on what we had to do to the dolphins. They are much bigger. They take several chops to get through their skull. You would have to chop, and a 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 chop.